This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Hello, and welcome back to Iowa We Can Do Better. It is the podcast where we remind everyone that, oh my God, we can vote differently and make Iowa a better place to live.
Let it be burned into your brain that we need to stop voting for people who do not care about us and who are not working to make our lives better. Because Iowa, we truly can do better, and we have the opportunity to.
And we have in the past. We know it is possible. Iowa has been both blue and purple in the past. We can do this.
We are a swing state.
We are a swing state.
Forever. It's possible. It's just been a while.
Yes.
And speaking of, we have a lot of really cool things to get to in the show today. We have some exciting special election news. We have a very special guest in studio. But first, let's talk about how much we love Amplified DSM Studios.
That is where we record our podcast, and it is a great space. And if you're looking for somewhere to record a podcast locally, they are an excellent option, and we cannot recommend them enough.
And we love their yellow chairs more than life.
We do.
That being said, we cannot produce an incredible podcast without support from folks like our listeners. So if you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, please feel free to click subscribe, share our content, follow us on Instagram, Iowa We Can Do Better.
On basically at least on YouTube and Instagram, we are Iowa We Can Do Better. You can find our podcast that way. You can also donate money by going to buymeacoffee.com/Iowa We Can Do Better. And every little bit helps.
Every little bit helps. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What have you been up to, Sarah?
I feel like everything in the world since the last time we recorded. I did go up to the Minnesota State Fair. I will be doing content about it because I know there's a rivalry there. And I'm not giving my findings here. You will have to follow me on the social medias to find out more about my feelings about the Minnesota State Fair.
I really want to know which fair is better. Are you going to be covering that in your content?
Possibly.
I've never been to the Minnesota State Fair. I've only been to the Iowa State Fair, 3 times now? I think 2 of them were with you.
Wait, seriously? You're from Iowa? I've been to the Iowa State Fair like 100 times, and I've only lived here for 4 years.
The first time I attempted to go to the Iowa State Fair was in 2021, and I drove all the way from Dubuque, where I was living at the time, to Des Moines, got here, and had food poisoning. So I couldn't even go. So I just fell asleep in my friend's apartment the whole day and missed out. But I went back in 2022. It was fine. I mean, people really hype it up.
I really like it. I think it's great. But state fairs are still very novel to me, so it's exciting. I don't think I'll get over it, though. I enjoy it. I also enjoy eating a lot of stupid food in a very short amount of time.
See, I think I'm good with just going once a year with you to see the fair food. You're going to point out where the gluten-free options are, where the good options are.
Correct.
And that's kind of all that I need. I need to be there for the ambiance, snap a couple pics of some cows. I milked a cow this year.
You did.
That was very exciting for me.
And it almost peed on you.
And it almost peed on me. I don't really want to talk about that. I am always going to remember that, and I'm going to remember the smell for a very long time. But once a year, I'll go with you. We'll eat the good food, lobster corn dog.
So that's the main thing. What have you been doing? Anything exciting?
What have I been doing? I've been taking a lot of deep breaths and going for walks lately.
Fair.
I am not going to lie. I've kind of been down in a funk just with everything going on in the world all the time and everything going on in Iowa all the time. It's a nice balance between 2 days of feeling really let's go get them, let's do work, let's get out and interview people. I've been doing interviews with candidates across the state.
You've been interviewing everyone, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been super fun, but I do need a lot of time to balance that with just being at home, hanging out with Chandler, going for walks, and just taking care of my mental health, because it is a lot.
Yes, it is a lot. Absolutely.
And I'm a sensitive girl.
Correct. What else is happening in the world? What do we got?
Well, we have some
At least in the world of Iowa.
In the world of Iowa. We can also talk about what's going on in the world of the world. But we had some recent, really exciting news come out of Iowa, and it's getting some national attention too. Our friend Caitlin Dray won the Senate District 1 special election.
Yeah, she won it 55% to 45%, I believe, 44%. And it officially broke the supermajority Republicans were holding in Iowa, which is enormous. It means that Kim Reynolds can't just push whatever she wants through for the next, however long she's in office. But still, she can't do everything she wants, which is A+. And the Republicans can't do everything they want because they don't have that supermajority anymore.
Yeah, because with the supermajority, you can kind of bypass the debates, the having the back and forth.
Yep.
You can just vote party lines, and unfortunately, that has been the case in Iowa for a while. There's been some really heinous shit coming out of the Capitol. We've seen it. You've seen it. This is kind of a check on that, which we really appreciate. And that Senate District 1 election was hard won.
And I mean, basically every special election that has happened since Trump came into office the second time we flipped it, which is really bodes well for the future.
There was one where we didn't flip it, but dang, we got close.
We
and
did
it was
get
like
very
a
close.
real big overperformance.
Correct. So it's still really good. And on top of that, which is just super cool for Caitlin, is Obama shouted her out.
She got a shout out
Which is
from Obama.
rad. Like all over the internet, Obama shouted her out. And like, hell yeah, that's rad. I want to get shouted
Everyone
out
is
by
shouting
Obama.
out Caitlin
Yeah,
Dray,
no,
and
it's
I'm
super,
so
it's
proud
super
to see
exciting.
it.
Yeah, she showed up on Under the Desk News, like a bunch of like big political creators, and then Obama. Super
That's
exciting.
the one.
That's the one. Like and she notably squeed about it, and good. Correct response. So that's super good. We had a feeling it was coming, but Joni Ernst has officially announced she is not running for re-election. Oh no, we're so upset.
Clearly.
But yeah, after her shoving her foot all the way into her own stomach by saying, well, we're all going to die. No one expected her to do well in the next election, so she is stepping out, which on the one hand, yay. On the other hand, Ashley Hinson has stepped up to take her place.
Yes, there are a couple people who have stepped up on the Republican side. There is, gosh, what's his name? Something Carlin. There's a Carlin who was already in the Senate race. He's kind of like funding his own campaign. He's not really getting much
On the
support or
Republican side?
donations. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I've never even heard of him. Okay.
Jim Carlin, I believe his name is. And then there's also Matt Whitaker, who works for the Trump administration right now.
Yes.
That is considering running, or will talk to Daddy Trump and see if he can get permission. So we'll see how that goes. There are a couple names on the Republican side vying for Joni Ernst's now vacant seat.
Yep.
But there, of course, are a lot of people on the Democratic side of things, too, who have tossed their name in.
Yep, and more and more. And we are hopefully going to talk to a lot of them on the podcast, fingers crossed. But otherwise, we will talk about them more next time. The other things going on are the big, beautiful bill is coming.
Still looming.
Yeah.
Our representatives, I don't know who's listening to this, but we live in the 3rd Congressional District.
Correct.
So Zach Nunn is our congressman. And
we love him so much. It is
We
widely
obviously
known
really love him.
how well we regard him. We
took
think
out-
he is truly excellent. I'm kidding. He's terrible.
Yeah, well, Abby. He took out $12,000 reportedly of taxpayer funds from the House funds to push digital ads to our community, telling us how great the big, beautiful bill is. And he got some really convincing stand-ins to play convincing Iowans who this helps. But I did a story or a video on this for the Iowa Starting Line. It's like the first Iowa mom that he features is someone who works as the research director for the Iowa's for Tax Relief Foundation, which is like a special interest group. And she also doesn't even live in our district.
Cool.
The second one is a waitress who's benefiting from the no tax on tips provision of the bill. Simple Google search, you can see that person's actually the general manager of the restaurant that she's acting as a waitress in. So disingenuous, and also with our taxpayer dollars, Zach.
Unsurprising. He's the worst. So yeah, and all of that goes to, there's 1,000 cuts coming, but one of the big one is a lot of cancer research is getting cut, which feels insane, especially in a place like Iowa where we know we have rising cancer rates all the time. Like the healthcare situation in the state is not ideal at the moment.
No, it's a perfect storm of shit. I mean, you have the nitrates in the water, you have the environmental factors, you have big ag at play, you have lifestyle choices, admittedly, because cancer is not like a one issue sort of thing. There's a lot of different factors contributing to it. But dang, it would be nice if we had representatives who took it seriously and were willing to dig in and see what the causes are, and also how we can fix this. I know the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, a lot of this falls on them to solve the state's problems. And $2 billion in funding to the National Institute of Health has been cut. And that was researching cancer, trying to find solutions to the issues that we're facing. So I'm incredibly disappointed, but not surprised at our representatives, including Marionette Miller Meeks, who is representing the district that has the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics in it. It's like, can you at least pretend to care?
Yeah, no, she can't. We know that. She's proven that time and time again. So that does feel, though, like an easy way to segue into our beautiful guest.
Today we are joined by Ruth Richardson, who is the CEO of Planned Parenthood North Central States. So that's covering Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, Nebraska, and South Dakota. We are so happy to have you with us here, Ruth.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Excited to be here.
You are currently the CEO of Planned Parenthood North Central States. You joined in 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Shortly after the Dobbs decision, when Roe was overturned.
What led you to that position?
You know, it's such a good question. And was working at Planned Parenthood North Central States on my bingo card? No. But what I will say is it feels like a culmination of walking in my purpose that led me to Planned Parenthood. At the time that the position was posted, I was serving in the Minnesota House, and I was CEO of Wayside Recovery Center, doing a lot of work around substance use disorder, mental health, and housing insecurity when I got a call. And a recruiter reached out and said, hey, your name has come up a few times about this position, which surprised me and got off the call. I called my daughter and I'm like, I just got a call from a recruiter about a job at Planned Parenthood. And my daughter's like, why are you on the phone with me? You need to call them back and say that you are interested in that job at this time, in this moment, for the movement. We need you.
That definitely was a calling. Post Roe v. Wade being overturned in 2022, the reproductive landscape has changed quite a bit across America. I think the Midwest is a real kind of hodgepodge of different rulings right now. Iowa has some pretty strict rulings. Can you talk about how the reproductive landscape has shifted since you took on this role?
You know, with the overturning of Roe, I think it really highlighted some real challenges that existed before Roe was overturned. More people were just impacted with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And at a high level, I just think it's really important for people to understand that abortion bans don't actually ban abortions.
Nope.
All they do is put up hardships and barriers for those who don't have the means or the opportunity in order to travel for care. And we've seen that play out here in Iowa, specifically with about the 6-week ban that is in place right now. There was a 182% increase in the number of Iowans who were forced to travel across state lines to Minnesota or to Nebraska for abortion care. And I think that is where what people really need to understand is, like, it's not stopping people from getting abortions, it's just making it harder for those that are without means. I think another piece that people really need to understand, because there's interconnections here, when you cut off access to one form of health care, it impacts access to all healthcare, and we can see the data. It's like the states with the most restrictive abortion bans, they have the worst health outcomes. They have higher rates of maternal mortality, infant mortality, and the list goes on.
We had Iowans for Health Liberty on the podcast last year, and they talked at length about not only does it cause those outcomes, but you also have less doctors coming to the state. You have less medical students coming to the state, less doctors starting their careers here. And all of that has this trickle-down effect that essentially people are dying because of this. And you think it's this single issue thing, and it is not. It is not just abortion. It is healthcare as a whole.
Absolutely. So I will preface this. I'm a Sagittarius.
Okay.
And someone once said that if you meet a Sagittarius, you're going to get a bunch of TED Talks you never asked for. And as you talk about that, I think about, like, the data. So, Black women in Iowa being 6 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause. And also the recognition that it is completely avoidable. Because 84% of those deaths are preventable, so it doesn't have to be that way. And also thinking about, shortly after coming into this role, seeing the data around infant mortality increasing for the first time in 30 years, and also seeing that it increased 30% in Iowa, which was more than any other state. And then you look at that in terms of thinking about the loss of providers in Iowa as well, and the increasing healthcare deserts. There are nothing about these decisions that are making anyone healthier.
No, not at all. And if listeners or watchers are not aware, a third of Iowa counties do not have OBGYN care.
If you do have a high-risk pregnancy, for instance, you have to travel to a place that you will be able to get care. Even if you live in a somewhat like big town for Iowa, let's say Dubuque, traveling to Iowa City is necessary in order for you to receive care. But that's dwindling. You mentioned 1/3 of the counties in Iowa are without an OBGYN. Iowa as a whole is considered a maternal health care desert. If people are not putting it together, doctors don't want to practice in a state where they could be sued or sent to jail for providing basic health care for their patients.
And that's why Iowa has the least number of OBGYNs per capita of any state.
I think as I become more and more kind of on board with the idea of having kids in the state of Iowa, it gets scary for people who consider making that leap, knowing that healthcare access might not be a thing, or you might have to travel in severe cases to get care when you should be able to get that care at home.
Yes, and it's more dangerous to be pregnant now in Iowa than it was 30 years ago.
Which feels crazy. Like that feels crazy. And you mentioned earlier, you made the, because it's Black women have higher mortality rates during pregnancy in general. Has that affected the way that you are overseeing Planned Parenthood in these states? Like your experience as a Black woman who is a mother, you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it's also important to lift up that with those maternal mortality rates, you can control for all the factors and we're still more likely to die. College-educated Black women die at a higher rate than white women who didn't finish high school, right? And you can control for familial status, access to insurance, mental health status, general overall health and nutrition, and still more likely to die. And so that means it's something that we can't earn our way out of. We can't educate our way out of. And doing this work and really understanding what's before us, we know that these deaths are preventable. So it absolutely influences the way that I lead as the first Black woman in our 100-year history to lead Planned Parenthood North Central States. And I think it's also really important for people to understand that we talk a lot about the mortality issue, but for every mortality, there's 100 morbidity events or near misses where someone almost dies from a pregnancy-related cause. And some of those morbidity events are so severe, they change the trajectory of people's lives forever. And so it's important that we also talk about those near misses as well. And the impacts that we see are very similar in terms of Black women carrying that burden more than others. So, but it's important work because we also know that it's preventable and there are things that we can do and there are learnings that we can have to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
I'm reliving an experience that I had yesterday. I went to a Planned Parenthood yesterday to support a friend, shout out, and the waiting room was packed. And of course I was looking ahead, practicing and looking up information for our show today. And years ago, there were 7 Planned Parenthood clinics across Iowa. There are 2 now. And those are in Des Moines and Iowa City. There is a whole half of the state in landmass and areas where people cannot easily access the care that should be afforded to them just because. And it was kind of heartbreaking being in there yesterday and just knowing I'm lucky. I live in this area, so I can drive here, I can walk here, I can find means of transportation to get here. And you think of the people who can't, and not just for things like abortion, for things like contraceptive care, STD testing. Yes. There is so
Cancer
much.
Screening.
Cancer screenings.
There's so much that Planned Parenthood does that either doesn't get the recognition or people aren't aware because they don't get to access Planned Parenthood where they live.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood was a lifesaver for me. I lived in an RV for 3 years and traveled the country and was uninsured because I was making hats for a living. That is real. My job was knitting hats for a couple of years.
I like that job.
Yeah, and then I was living in upstate New York and was also uninsured. And both times I had access to a Planned Parenthood. I was able to go get a checkup, get my birth control prescribed, all of the stuff that I needed to continue on my way and like live the lifestyle I want to live while knowing that like I'm getting looked at by a doctor. And on top of that, for the first time in my adult life while having a constant doctor, I don't have an OBGYN. My primary care physician does my pap smears. I am older than my male primary care physician, and he can't make eye contact afterwards, and it's so awkward because I'm like, this should not be an awkward experience. Like this should be between me and my doctor he didn't sign up for this, but because he works in Iowa, this is what he has to do, which feels bananas.
I don't have an OBGYN either.
Yeah.
And when I first moved to Des Moines, I didn't have health insurance. And Planned Parenthood was that lifeline for me. And I cannot say enough how much of a relief and how humbled I was by the fact that I could go in and receive care with no shame and with compassion and feel that I was truly taken care of in a setting that is so stigmatized by some people who don't understand the benefits and the crucial work that Planned Parenthood does.
You know, just hearing both of you and how Planned Parenthood was a lifeline for you, it was a lifeline for me when I was a teenager as well and uninsured. And I had lived throughout my teens with debilitating pain, didn't know why, went to a number of different doctors, emergency rooms, had my pain dismissed. And it wasn't until I found Planned Parenthood that I was put on a path to live for the first time in so many years without debilitating pain. And I changed my life. And I will say I credit the life that I have now to the help that I got from Planned Parenthood, because it totally changed my ability to just even go to school and work without missing massive amount of days because I was navigating so much pain.
So really getting this job, I mean, this job was really a full circle moment of like, they saved your life once and then gave you this incredible opportunity. Wow.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. And had no idea all those years ago that this is where we would be. Yeah. But I think it speaks to the importance of the work and that lifeline that people have. It's a unifying factor within our supporters, and we hear so many of those incredible stories.
We are fortunate to still have an operating Planned Parenthood in our town, like I mentioned, but we also exist in 2026 or 2025. Wow. Clearly I'm like
in the future.
I'm trying to think ahead to the midterms. I'm always trying to think of the midterms that are coming up because that's like a hope. But we exist in 2025 in the United States. So there are constant threats of attacks. Recently, the cuts to Medicaid were brought up as something that could really impact the care that Planned Parenthood provides for populations. Why do you think that Planned Parenthood is like the personification of what the right is always trying to attack?
You know, I think it comes down to control. I think a lot of the issues that we are navigating right now within this moment are rooted in long-standing sort of patterns of trying to control women, control certain demographics of people. I think that's at the root of all of this. I also think that we are in this space because we know that your health shouldn't be dictated by your zip code. That shouldn't determine whether you're going to have access to an OBGYN, if you're going to have access to, things like cancer screenings and annual visits. And I think what's most interesting is what people are willing to sacrifice in pursuit of control.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's, you mentioned zip code, but I think it's a class issue as well, because Planned Parenthood provides care to everyone, and the right doesn't really care for the poor.
No. Well, there was an example of a congresswoman in Florida who had an ectopic pregnancy and was able to get abortion care despite preaching time and time again that this should be banned nationwide, no exceptions. And it's kind of like an access for me, but not for you sort of deal. And
I mean, that's all we've always talked about this, that, Republican senators will scream that abortion is terrible, but their mistresses will always be able to get them. Like, it's just, it is what it is. And it's genuinely horrifying. But I think you're right. I think it does come down to a control issue. And they want to say what can be done to our bodies and what we can choose to do with our bodies. And that's horrifying in just about every direction.
let's talk about the current state of reproductive rights in Iowa specifically. So in 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned at the national level, which gave a lot of states with leadership like Iowa's kind of that incentive or that push to ban abortion at the state level. In 2023, that ban was put forth by Kim Reynolds in the Iowa Supreme Court. They banned abortion at 6 weeks. In 2023, that ban went into full effect. So 6 weeks is before a lot of people even know that they're pregnant.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. What does it look like for someone in Iowa who has just found out that they are 7 weeks pregnant?
And I want to back up for a second because I also want to lift up the amazing amount of work that went into fighting off this abortion ban
Yes.
for about a decade. And when the bill first passed, we actually were able to get it struck down as being, because there was a divided court at that time, but then they passed the same bill and came back, and a little over a year ago, it became it became law. And I think, you know, again, at the root of all of this is this whole thing about control, and politicians shouldn't be in the examination
Correct.
room.
I'd prefer.
Yeah.
And also, I think there is a true lack of understanding of the intersectional sort of nature of what happens under the guise of abortion bans. And, you know, we've talked about just some of the services that we provide. The cancer screenings, for example. There are now less cancer screenings in Iowa as a result of the threats and the attacks, and we are also in a space of where there's less access to preventative care.
Yep.
Those annual wellness visits that are so important in terms of thinking about preventative care. And what this means is that so often people are forced to get their care in emergency rooms.
Yes.
It's more expensive. And usually at that point, things that could have been easily taken care of are sometimes becoming life-threatening. And so that's sort of the space that we're currently occupying.
And that's frightening for anybody. It's frightening if
Absolutely.
you believe in abortion or believe in access to abortion. It's frightening if you don't, because you truly don't know with the pregnancy that you have what that will look like. You can't predict perfect outcomes for that, but you also can't predict the necessity that you or a loved one will have for Planned Parenthood services.
You know, and even thinking of my own sort of personal story with abortion as well. I had a miscarriage and had to be rushed to the hospital. And what I always think about, you know, in that moment as I was processing all of the things that we're going through, this is before Roe v. Wade was overturned, I was met with care without hesitation. And we are now in a space where providers and doctors are forced to hesitate before providing care, and it's leading to deadly consequences.
Absolutely. I have my cousin had an ectopic pregnancy she was unaware of, and was literally at the rehearsal dinner for her stepsister's wedding. and it burst, and she had to be rushed to the emergency room, not knowing what was going on. And if this was pre the turnover of Roe, but had it been post, there would have been this pause that would have stopped her getting care immediately, and Jeff definitely could have caused her to not be with us any longer, which is terrifying to think about. It's a terrifying prospect.
And really, that could be anybody.
Anybody, absolutely. This is my, personal story, but yes, it could be anyone's family member where this is happening, and it's awful.
What gives you hope, and what keeps your cup full in times like this?
Amongst all of this, we have to continue to have hope, and we also have to continue to find joy in these moments, because there is a mission to strip people away of hope and of joy. And I think one of the things that keeps me moving, especially in the darkest and the hardest of times, I lean into a lot of the history of my own ancestors, and I think about what they navigated. And for me, it's always that reminder that we can do hard things because we've done hard things before. And it's also really important for us to remember that, that whole saying, Coretta Scott King said, freedom is never really won. You have to fight for it in every generation. And this is our generation's fight. And as I think about the ways that the pendulum has swung across history, and there can be these long arms of hard, difficult times, but I know that that pendulum is going to swing back. So much of it is about how we are sort of leaning into this moment, who we're surrounding ourselves with, because there's power in our collective voices, in our collective action, and I just know that we have what it takes to build a better tomorrow than what we're experiencing today.
We talk about it on this podcast all the time. We talk about reminding people to build community, to have meals with people, to lean into joy, and to volunteer if you have the spoons for it, to donate money if you have the opportunity to do that, and especially through volunteering. You will find your community, and you will find people who feel the same way and are fighting like you are. And there's so much good in that, and there's so much good to come from that. And also just having these conversations, as hard as it can be and as scary as it can be, making sure that there is hope on the other end of this. And it's important to focus on that.
Yeah, the community is so important.
Community is so important.
It's the power of people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how we get any change accomplished.
Absolutely.
It's through people.
Speaking of, what can people do, everyday, ordinary Iowans or people in North Central states, what can we do to support the work that Planned Parenthood is doing?
Really great question. And you hit on a number of things. Giving is very important, especially within this moment where we have so many threats to our funding. You mentioned the Medicaid threat, which came through the reconciliation bill. But even before that began, we had more than $2.8 million of our dollars frozen through our Title X program. And Title X, for people who may not be aware of that, it provides a sliding scale fee for low-income individuals, and sometimes that slides all the way to zero so that they can access things like birth control, annual wellness visits, cancer screenings, behavioral health services. So the giving in this moment, I think, is really important, because we know how Planned Parenthood can be a lifeline for individuals. Yeah. And we see a lot of individuals who are uninsured. So that's always something that I think is really important. The community aspect is also really important as well. We have ways that people can get involved with volunteering. We just had a number of great volunteers at the state fair. Recently is our first time having a booth at the Minnesota State Fair in our 100-year history, which was kind of a fun, really cool, historic moment. Escorts who help to escort patients in for their appointments when, unfortunately, they're having to walk through protesters or drive through protesters. is another way of getting involved. And there's always that community aspect. We have a number of events throughout the year, and always wanting to connect with new people and to sort of build new sort of frameworks of power.
I will say, anytime I go to a Planned Parenthood event or a fundraiser, I leave feeling hopeful and like I'm surrounded by that community that we so often are seeking in our society. Just to be surrounded by people who are willing to be there for one another, uplift one another, and contribute to a cause that's so worthy.
Yes, the community of donors and friends and supporters, they power the work that we do, and it's also such an inspiration for our staff as well, because we have a strong, resilient staff that continue to show up through lots of things. And whenever I'm welcoming new staff during orientations, it's like, thank you for choosing us, because there are easier paychecks to be found for sure. But I'm always inspired by the staff that are coming through, because this is more than just a job to them. It's a calling to a mission. And I think that there's a power in that. And I feel like people see that when we have our events, when they see that power in action.
My brain turned into soup. I was like, I had another question, and it went, nope, you don't.
Well, it kind of answers the question for me of which state fair is better, the Minnesota or the Iowa. We were noting earlier, the Iowa State Fair has Dinosaurs Aren't Real and
true.
Noah's Ark is real. The
That's
Minnesota
one
State
booth.
Fair has a Planned Parenthood booth. Amazing. We'll work on getting that down to Iowa too.
I will happily volunteer at that one, because what we currently have at the Iowa State Fair is there was a giant anti-abortion booth, which is way across the hall from the Dinosaurs Are Real booth.
It's disingenuous,
Yes,
I
also
think.
correct.
And it ignores the full picture of what's actually going on. So a lot of people see through that. We will continue to advocate for the services and the work that Planned Parenthood does, because we know from our own experiences and from listening to one another how vital it is in our community.
And sliding scale healthcare in general is hugely important, like hugely important. And again, Planned Parenthood saved my ass on multiple occasions, and it was great.
That's an important part of the safety net
Huge important part.
infrastructure of the healthcare system.
I usually ask this question of people in my book club because I think it's a fun icebreaker. Plus, I like to get to know a little bit about folks that I'm talking with. But is there a piece of media that you've consumed lately, whether a book, an article, a TV show, a song, that has inspired you that you would like to pass on?
Oh, that is such a good question. I'm trying to think of something that I read recently. So I actually had the opportunity recently to interact with Michelle Goodwin. And Michelle Goodwin is a constitutional law scholar. She does a lot on MSNBC, CNN, and other sort of major networks. And she has a book that is focused on the criminalization of pregnancy. And one of the things that I think was so important about her work, she was foreshadowing the fall of Roe 10 years before Roe fell. Wow. All of the things that she was talking about, we are seeing kind of magnified within this moment. But people being forced to travel for care, and then also thinking about the maternal mortality crisis that we're seeing within the country, but also how people are being criminalized for like having miscarriages and things of that nature. And so while the book foreshadowed all of these things, it also tells us what it's like, the blueprint for what we need to do.
That's helpful.
Yes. And so I'm always inspired by the authors, like her, like Michelle Goodwin, and others that have blueprints for change and not just for wallowing in just the dumpster fire of the moment.
There is a certain level of, okay, acknowledge the dumpster fire, but also
Exactly.
get it together
Yeah.
and let's lock in and do something.
Get a bucket
Yes.
brigade. We got this.
And she does this great job of reminding us all the things that we are experiencing today. None of this is new. The old is new again. And so these are things that we have fought through before, and we can lean into the ways that we fought through these things before to change the trajectory in the future.
I mean, only those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. It's trends are cyclical. All of this is cyclical. We just need to pay attention to the signs.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we appreciate that recommendation, and we appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate the work that you do. We appreciate you coming and meeting with us in the studio, and really, I can't thank you enough for your presence.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for everything.
course.
that you
You're
do
welcome
as
back
well.
anytime. Next
Yes,
time you're in Des
anytime.
Moines, we'll hit up the state fair. Just kidding.
Look, I will take anyone to the state fair. I don't care who it is. Let's go. I want to hang out at the fair.
Well, this has been another episode of Iowa We Can Do Better.
Correct.
Once again, reminding Iowans that we can do better. We just need to put in the work.
And honestly, not even that much. Just get out and vote the right way. Well, the left way, I guess. But
Get out there and pay attention to who is running in your area. I know there have been a lot of announcements as far as U.S. Senate. We have a crowded field there. There are a lot of local elections taking place. I know the Des Moines City Council will have an election on November 4th
Correct.
of this year. But as we look ahead to 2026, where my mind is all the time, pay attention to who's running in your area, both at the state level and the folks who are applying for the job to represent you in Washington, D.C., because arguably it's more important than ever. They say that every election.
But it really is this time. It feels really important this time.
Vital.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe. And if you're feeling generous, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Iowa We Can Do Better. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Thanks
See you
for
next
listening.
time. Jinx. We didn't say the same thing. But we did talk at the same time.
Hooray.